Thousands of years ago, people did not simply live alongside animals, they worshipped them. Across deserts, jungles, mountains, and river valleys, creatures like lions, serpents, cats, eagles, and bulls were believed to carry divine power, hidden wisdom, and messages from worlds unseen. But why did entire civilizations build temples for animals, bury them with honor, and place them at the center of their greatest myths tonight? We uncover the forgotten stories, ancient mysteries, and surprising truths behind the sacred animals of the ancient world. Before we go deeper into history, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy exploring the mysteries of our distant past. Now, let us step into a world where animals were far more than beasts. They were gods, guardians, and living secrets. Long before cities rose along rivers, before kings carved their names into stone, and before the first scribes set pen to clay, humans were already watching the creatures around them with a mixture of awe, curiosity, and caution. Across the shifting landscapes of prehistory, from the grasslands of Africa to the forested valleys of Eurasia, animals were not merely companions or prey. They were signs, omens, and sometimes guides. A lion's roar at dusk, the sudden flight of birds across the sky, or the tracks of a predator near a waterhole could mean the difference between life and death. Yet, as survival instincts intertwined with imagination, these early observers began to see patterns, to sense that certain creatures carried more than physical presence, they carried meaning. In these formative centuries, humans began projecting qualities onto animals' strength, cunning, loyalty, unpredictability. A wolf's hunting skill became a metaphor for strategy and cunning. The perseverance of a beaver reshaped into tales of diligence and craftsmanship. Scholars still debate when this symbolic thinking shifted from mere observation to spiritual significance. But what survives in the record suggests that sacred roles were assigned even in the absence of formal religion. Certain caves bear faint handprints alongside paintings of bison and aurochs, their exaggerated horns and muscular forms imbued with a presence that seems deliberate, almost reverent. The animals are larger than life, occupying the walls as if demanding recognition not just as food, but as entities with a place in the invisible order of the world. Evidence from the earliest human settlements hints that this reverence was not uniform but selective. Some species, those that sustained life, inspired fear, or demonstrated striking behavior, were repeatedly depicted across regions and generations. The aurochs, the wild ancestor of domestic cattle, appears across sites in Europe with ritualized emphasis, its form often painted with precision and care, far beyond what simple hunting scenes would require. Similarly, the cave paintings of Chauvet in France and Lascaux reveal lions, horses, and bears not merely in motion, but staged, sometimes in sequences that suggest narrative or symbolic storytelling. These early portrayals may reflect a consciousness that sees the natural world as layered with unseen forces, where certain animals act as intermediaries between humans and the cosmos itself. Even as hunter-gatherer groups roamed the continents, there are hints that the reverence for animals affected daily life. Some bones were carefully buried, separated from ordinary refuse, suggesting that death itself was a boundary crossed with respect. Ochre and pigment stained tools and figurines, perhaps invoking protection, fertility, or guidance. The evidence remains incomplete, and interpretations vary, but the persistence of certain animals in early symbolic culture points to a deep psychological resonance. Creatures that could hunt, flee, or survive against immense odds became mirrors through which humans measured their own existence and moral imagination. Before we go deeper, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, if this is the kind of history and mystery you enjoy. The fascination with animals was not static. It evolved alongside climate shifts, migrations, and social structures. A species that once symbolized abundance might come to represent danger as environments changed, or its role could be transferred to a domestic counterpart. Early humans were learning through observation and ritual to read the world around them, not as a series of obstacles but as a web of signs, with animals at the nodes, by tracing these first sparks of reverence. We catch the first glimpses of a world view in which humans were beginning to locate themselves not at the center of existence, but within a larger tapestry of life, death, and unseen forces. As the Ice Age loosens its grip on much of the world and climates begin to stabilize, human communities undergo a transformation that is as profound as any revolution in history. Small bands that once followed migrating herds across vast distances gradually spend longer periods in particular places. Rivers become anchors, seasonal camps become settlements, wild grasses are harvested more deliberately. Animals are observed not only as quarry but as neighbors whose habits, migrations, and behaviors are increasingly familiar. In this changing relationship between humans and the natural world, reverence begins to deepen into something more structured. For countless generations, survival has depended upon understanding animals. Hunters learn the routes of deer through forests, the timing of salmon runs, and the warning calls of birds that reveal the presence of predators. Yet knowledge alone does not fully explain what emerges. Across different regions, people begin treating certain animals with extraordinary care, investing them with symbolic power that reaches far beyond practical necessity. The distinction between survival and spirituality becomes increasingly difficult to separate. A hunter standing beside the remains of a successful kill may feel gratitude as much as triumph. The death of a powerful animal is not always viewed as a simple victory. In many early societies, it appears to carry obligations. Rituals emerge that acknowledge the life taken. Bones are arranged in particular ways, skulls are preserved, certain body parts are returned to rivers, caves, or elevated places. These practices appear again and again across widely separated cultures. No single explanation fully accounts for this pattern, but many scholars believe it reflects an attempt to maintain balance between human needs and the forces represented by the animal world. The bear provides one of the most striking examples. Throughout northern Eurasia, archaeological discoveries suggest that bears occupied a unique position in human imagination. They walked on 4 legs yet could stand upright. They were powerful hunters but also consumed plants and berries. They retreated into dens and emerged months later as if reborn. To people living close to nature, such characteristics seemed remarkable. In some regions, bear skulls were carefully placed in caves or arranged in ways that suggest ceremonial treatment. Among much later traditional cultures in Siberia and northern Europe, rituals surrounding bears preserved echoes of beliefs that may stretch back thousands of years. What makes these patterns particularly fascinating is that sacred status often develops around animals that evoke contradictory emotions. Humans revere creatures they fear. They honor predators capable of killing them. They admire animals that compete for resources. The lion, wolf, bear, crocodile, and eagle all occupy this unusual category. Rather than avoiding dangerous creatures in mythology and ritual, many societies elevate them. Their strength becomes sacred precisely because it exceeds ordinary human capability. At the same time, animals associated with abundance begin acquiring spiritual importance. Herd animals provide meat, hides, bones, and eventually milk. Their migrations influence human movement. Their fertility becomes a symbol of prosperity. In some communities, successful reproduction among wild herds may be linked to the well-being of the entire group. Rituals intended to ensure plentiful game become intertwined with broader beliefs about cosmic order. The transition from hunting to herding accelerates this process. As humans begin domesticating animals, relationships become more intimate and more complex. Sheep, goats, cattle, and pigs are no longer distant creatures encountered during seasonal hunts. They are present every day. They shape routines, economies, and social structures. Yet domestication does not erase spiritual significance. In many cases, it strengthens it. The wild aurochs offers a revealing example. Towering over modern cattle, these immense animals inspire awe across prehistoric Europe and parts of Asia. Their images dominate cave walls. Their horns appear in ritual contexts. As cattle domestication spreads, some of the symbolic power associated with the aurochs appears to transfer to domestic herds. What was once embodied by a wild and formidable creature gradually becomes embedded in the animals living beside human settlements. Sacred meaning adapts rather than disappears. This process reveals something important about the human mind. Sacred animals are not simply chosen at random. They emerge from relationships. A creature becomes meaningful because it occupies a significant place within daily experience. The more essential the connection, the greater the symbolic potential. An animal that feeds a community, protects it, threatens it, or fascinates it, possesses a unique ability to enter stories, rituals, and eventually religion. Archaeological sites from the Neolithic period provide glimpses of this transformation. At places such as Göbekli Tepe, enormous stone pillars carved more than 11,000 years ago feature foxes, snakes, boars, vultures, and other animals. The carvings dominate the site. Human figures are comparatively rare. This imbalance has intrigued researchers for decades. Why would one of the earliest monumental ritual complexes place such emphasis on animals? The answer remains uncertain. Some scholars suggest these creatures represented spiritual guardians. Others believe they symbolized clans, myths, or cosmological forces. The evidence remains incomplete. Yet whatever the explanation, the carvings reveal a world in which animals occupy the center of sacred imagination. They are not decorative additions. They are fundamental participants in the symbolic universe. As settlements expand and societies become increasingly organized, sacred animals begin serving additional functions. They help define group identity. Certain communities associate themselves with particular species. Shared reverence creates social bonds. Myths emerge explaining ancestral connections between humans and animals. Some groups claim descent from wolves, bears, birds, or other creatures. These stories may not be understood as literal history, but they provide a framework through which people understand who they are and where they belong. The natural world itself reinforces these beliefs. A migration arriving at exactly the right season, an eagle appearing during an important gathering, or the sudden abundance of fish after a ritual offering can seem like confirmation that unseen relationships exist between humans and animals. In a world without scientific explanations for many natural events, such experiences carry immense emotional weight. Over time, the boundary separating animal and spirit becomes increasingly porous. Certain creatures are no longer viewed merely as inhabitants of the landscape. They become participants in cosmic processes. Their movements signal change. Their behavior conveys meaning. Their existence hints at powers operating beyond ordinary perception. This evolution does not happen everywhere in the same way, nor does it follow a single path. Yet across continents, a similar pattern emerges. Animals move from survival necessities to symbols. Symbols become sacred. Sacred creatures become woven into the foundations of belief itself. And nowhere will this transformation become more elaborate, visible, and enduring than along the banks of a river whose annual floods create one of the most remarkable civilizations the world has ever known. The Nile moves through the landscape with a rhythm that feels eternal. Each year its waters swell, spread across the floodplains, and retreat again, leaving behind fertile soil that transforms a narrow ribbon of land into one of the richest agricultural regions in the ancient world. For the people who settle along its banks, survival depends upon understanding cycles that seem larger than human control. The river rises and falls. The stars shift across the heavens. Crops grow and die. Animals appear and disappear with the seasons, over thousands of years. These patterns become woven into a sophisticated religious system in which sacred animals occupy an extraordinary position. Ancient Egypt does not simply admire animals. It integrates them into nearly every aspect of spiritual life. To modern observers, Egyptian religion can seem filled with creatures. Falcons soar above temple walls, cats sit beside gods, crocodiles receive offerings, bulls are honored with ceremonies, ibises appear in sacred imagery, jackals guard the realm of the dead. Yet these animals are rarely worshipped merely for being animals. Instead, they serve as living expressions of divine qualities, visible manifestations of forces that shape both nature and society. One of the most familiar examples is the falcon. High above the Nile Valley, falcons patrol the skies with astonishing speed and precision. Their vision is extraordinary. Their dives are swift and deadly. To Egyptian observers, such creatures embody authority and command. The falcon becomes closely associated with Horus, the god connected to kingship, protection, and the heavens. Egyptian rulers are not merely political leaders. They are linked symbolically to Horus himself. The falcon's ability to dominate the sky mirrors the king's ideal role in maintaining order on earth. Nearby, another sacred creature quietly acquires immense importance. Along riverbanks and within settlements, cats prove invaluable. They hunt rodents that threaten grain stores. They control snakes and other pests. Their grace and alertness inspire admiration. Over time, cats become associated with Bastet, a deity linked to protection, fertility, domestic life, and later, broader forms of divine guardianship. The relationship between Egyptians and cats grows remarkably close. In some periods, harming a cat carries severe consequences. When household cats die, families may mourn them. Archaeological discoveries reveal cat cemeteries containing thousands of carefully prepared animal burials. These burials offer a fascinating glimpse into the complexity of Egyptian belief. Some sacred animals live as honored creatures within temples. Others are bred specifically as votive offerings. Pilgrims visiting religious centers purchase mummified animals to present to the gods. Millions of animal mummies are eventually produced across Egypt. Cats, ibises, falcons, crocodiles, fish, and other species are preserved through elaborate processes. The scale is astonishing. Entire industries develop around breeding, caring for, and preparing sacred animals. For modern archaeologists, these discoveries raise important questions. Were all of these animals treated equally? Did every sacred creature enjoy special status during life? The evidence suggests a more complicated picture. Some temple animals receive exceptional care and prestige. Others appear to have been raised primarily for ritual purposes. No single explanation fully accounts for every practice observed across Egypt's long history. Beliefs evolve over centuries, and different regions emphasize different traditions. Among the most imposing sacred animals is the bull, massive, powerful, and capable of both creation and destruction. Bulls symbolize fertility, strength, and divine vitality. The most famous example is the Apis bull, a living animal selected according to specific physical characteristics and revered as a manifestation of divine power. When an Apis bull dies, elaborate ceremonies accompany its burial. Priests search for a successor possessing the required markings. The continuity of the sacred bull reinforces broader ideas about renewal, kingship, and cosmic stability. The crocodile presents a different kind of sacred relationship. Few creatures inspire more fear. Large Nile crocodiles are apex predators capable of killing humans and livestock alike. Yet in some regions, particularly around centers devoted to the god Sobek, crocodiles become objects of reverence. This may seem paradoxical, but it reflects a recurring pattern in human religious history. Dangerous animals often acquire sacred status precisely because of their power. By honoring them, communities symbolically acknowledge forces they cannot fully control. Temple complexes dedicated to Sobek sometimes house living crocodiles adorned with jewelry and cared for by priests. Ancient accounts describe sacred crocodiles receiving special treatment and ceremonial attention. Scholars still debate how widespread these practices were and how they varied over time, but archaeological evidence confirms that crocodile cults played a significant role in certain parts of Egyptian religious life. Another sacred creature leaves behind one of the largest animal burial records in human history, the ibis. Associated with Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and knowledge, the ibis becomes deeply embedded within Egyptian intellectual and religious symbolism. Excavations reveal vast catacombs filled with millions of mummified ibises. The sheer scale suggests not only devotion, but a highly organized religious economy capable of supporting enormous ritual activity. What makes Egypt particularly remarkable is the degree to which sacred animals bridge the gap between everyday life and divine reality. Unlike many later religious traditions that place a sharp distinction between sacred and ordinary existence, Egyptian belief often allows divine presence to manifest through living creatures. An animal is not simply a symbol pointing toward a god. Under certain circumstances, it may serve as a vessel through which divine power becomes visible in the world. This worldview emerges from a broader understanding of cosmic order known as Ma'at, the principle of balance, harmony, and proper functioning. Animals participate in this order just as humans do. Their behaviors reflect aspects of creation itself. A falcon's flight, a cat's vigilance, or a crocodile's strength can reveal truths about the structure of existence. Observing animals becomes, in part, a way of understanding the divine. Yet Egyptian sacred animals are not isolated phenomena. Similar patterns are appearing across neighboring civilizations. Throughout the ancient Near East, powerful kingdoms are also associating animals with authority, protection, and cosmic order. Lions stand beside thrones. Winged beasts guard palace gates. Bulls symbolize strength on a monumental scale. As states grow larger and rulers seek new ways to project power, sacred animals begin serving not only spiritual functions but political ones as well. The creatures that once inhabited forests, rivers, and grasslands are becoming symbols of empires. As villages grow into cities and cities expand into kingdoms, sacred animals begin to acquire new responsibilities. They are no longer only companions of gods or symbols of natural forces. Increasingly, they become instruments of authority. Rulers discover that the qualities people admire, fear, or respect in animals can be woven into political power itself. Across the ancient Near East, from the fertile valleys of Mesopotamia to the rugged highlands of Anatolia and the great trade routes stretching toward Persia, some of the most influential civilizations on Earth begin speaking the language of animals. Among these creatures, none commands attention quite like the lion. For people living in the ancient world, lions are not distant exotic animals seen only in books or zoos. Asian lions once roam large parts of the Near East. Their presence is real and immediate. They threaten livestock. They occasionally attack humans. Their roar carries across open landscapes. Their strength appears almost supernatural. To encounter a lion is to confront a force that seems to exist beyond ordinary human limits. It is therefore unsurprising that kings repeatedly associate themselves with lions. Relief carvings from Mesopotamia depict rulers standing over slain lions or engaging them in dramatic hunts. To modern eyes, these scenes may look like demonstrations of bravery. In reality, they serve a deeper symbolic purpose. The lion represents chaos, danger, and untamed power. By conquering it, the king demonstrates his ability to impose order upon the world. Perhaps nowhere is this symbolism more striking than in the royal art of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. The palaces of Nineveh contain extraordinary relief showing royal lion hunts in vivid detail. Muscles strain beneath stone-carved skin. Arrows strike with lethal precision. Lions leap, roar, and collapse. These scenes are among the finest works of ancient art ever created. Yet they are also political statements. The king is not merely hunting, he is performing cosmic maintenance. His victory over the lion mirrors his responsibility to preserve stability within the empire. The symbolism works because people already understand the lion's significance. Sacred animals derive their power from familiarity. Their meaning is built upon generations of observation. When rulers adopt these symbols, they tap into emotional and cultural associations that audiences immediately recognize. The bull occupies a similarly important role. Across Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and neighboring regions, bulls symbolize strength, fertility, endurance, and divine energy. Massive horns become visual shorthand for power. In many artistic traditions, gods wear horned crowns. Temple decorations incorporate bull imagery. Monumental sculptures place bulls at entrances to sacred and political spaces. One of the most remarkable examples emerges from Assyria. Enormous guardian figures known as lamassu stand at palace gates. These creatures combine the body of a bull or lion, the wings of a bird, and a human head. Their appearance is striking even today. To ancient visitors approaching royal complexes, they must have seemed overwhelming. The lamassu reveal an important aspect of sacred animal symbolism. Ancient cultures often combine multiple creatures into composite beings. Rather than choosing a single animal, artists merge desirable qualities together. The strength of the bull, the speed and vision of the eagle, the intelligence of a human ruler. The resulting figure becomes more than an animal and more than a person. It embodies idealized power. Scholars still debate exactly how such figures were understood by ordinary people. Were they viewed as literal supernatural beings, symbolic guardians, or something in between? The evidence remains incomplete. What survives suggests that ancient audiences may not have separated symbolism and reality as sharply as modern observers often do. Sacred images could simultaneously represent ideas and participate in spiritual reality. Meanwhile, in the cities of Mesopotamia, animals appear constantly in religious life. Lions accompany goddesses. Bulls accompany storm gods. Eagles, serpents, fish, and hybrid creatures populate myths and temple art. The natural world becomes a vocabulary through which cosmic concepts are expressed. This symbolic language spreads far beyond Mesopotamia. In Anatolia, the Hittites incorporate lions into monumental architecture. Stone lions guard gateways and ceremonial entrances. Their watchful presence signals protection, authority, and divine favor. Travelers entering sacred precincts pass between creatures that seem permanently alert. Further east, powerful traditions continue to develop around bulls and other sacred animals. In ancient Iran, animal symbolism becomes closely connected to kingship and imperial identity. Relief carvings from the Achaemenid Empire show delegations bringing tribute, often accompanied by animals that reinforce ideas of abundance and order. Throughout these visual programs, nature and political authority remain deeply intertwined. Yet not all sacred animals represent dominance. Some embody fertility and renewal. In agricultural societies, the survival of entire communities depends upon successful harvests. Rain arrives or fails. Rivers flood or remain low. Herds multiply or decline. Animals associated with reproduction become symbols of prosperity and continuity. This helps explain why cattle occupy such an important place in so many cultures. Their ability to reproduce, provide food, and support agricultural economies makes them powerful symbols of abundance. Female cattle, in particular, often become associated with motherhood, nourishment, and creation. Similar themes appear repeatedly across ancient mythologies, suggesting that human dependence upon livestock profoundly shapes spiritual imagination. At the same time, another predator begins acquiring symbolic significance alongside the lion. The eagle dominates the skies in much the same way the lion dominates the land. Its sharp vision, commanding flight, and ability to strike from above make it a natural symbol of divine authority. Across multiple civilizations, eagles become associated with gods, rulers, and celestial power. Their perspective seems almost supernatural. They see what others cannot. The recurrence of these same animals across different cultures raises an intriguing question. Why do similar species acquire sacred significance in places separated by vast distances and different languages? Part of the answer lies in shared human psychology. Certain animals naturally attract attention because of their size, behavior, or ecological role. Predators inspire fear. Herd animals sustain communities. Birds connect earth and sky. Serpents move in ways that appear mysterious and unpredictable. Humans respond to these characteristics in remarkably consistent ways. Yet psychology alone does not explain everything. Animals also become sacred because they seem to inhabit spaces humans cannot easily access. Eagles soar high above the world. Serpents disappear underground. Crocodiles move between land and water. Ravens appear before battlefields and after death. These creatures cross boundaries that humans find significant. They become natural candidates for spiritual interpretation. As kingdoms continue expanding, these associations grow increasingly sophisticated. Sacred animals appear in official ceremonies, royal propaganda, religious festivals, and monumental architecture. Their meanings multiply. A lion can symbolize both divine protection and royal authority. A bull can represent fertility, cosmic strength, and political legitimacy simultaneously. The animal world is becoming a bridge between visible and invisible realities. And nowhere will that bridge appear more mysterious than among the creatures believed to move freely between different worlds. Animals that ancient people regarded not merely as symbols of power, but as messengers carrying knowledge from realms beyond human reach. Power alone does not explain why certain animals become sacred. Strength can inspire admiration, fear can command respect, and usefulness can create dependence. But many of the most enduring sacred creatures of the ancient world possess something more elusive. They seem to move between boundaries. They appear and disappear unexpectedly. They inhabit environments humans cannot fully access. They travel through the sky, vanish underground, emerge from deep water, or navigate landscapes with uncanny precision. To ancient observers, such abilities often suggested a connection to realms beyond ordinary experience. This is where sacred animals begin taking on one of their most fascinating roles: messengers between worlds. Few creatures embody this idea more clearly than birds. For most of human history, flight appears almost miraculous. Birds rise effortlessly into the sky, crossing vast distances beyond human reach. They disappear over horizons and return with the changing seasons. Some arrive with remarkable regularity, seemingly obeying invisible laws. Others appear suddenly before storms or climatic shifts. To societies deeply attuned to nature, these patterns are impossible to ignore. Across the ancient Mediterranean, the Near East, and much of Europe, birds become associated with prophecy and divine communication. Their movements are carefully observed, their calls are interpreted, their behavior becomes part of decision-making processes that influence everything from warfare to agriculture. Among the ancient Romans, long after many earlier traditions have developed, trained observers known as augurs study the flight of birds to interpret divine intentions. While later Roman practices are well documented, the underlying idea is far older. Humans have likely been reading meaning into bird behavior for thousands of years before formal systems emerge. The logic is understandable. Birds occupy a realm between earth and sky. They move through the atmosphere where storms form and celestial bodies travel. In many belief systems, the heavens are associated with divine powers. Creatures capable of entering that space naturally acquire spiritual significance. Certain species become especially important. Eagles symbolize divine authority and vision. Their extraordinary eyesight allows them to detect prey from remarkable distances. To ancient observers, this ability seems almost supernatural. The eagle becomes associated with gods of the sky, rulers, and celestial power across multiple civilizations. Ravens and crows develop a very different reputation. Unlike eagles, these intelligent birds often gather around battlefields, carrion, and places associated with death. They display problem-solving abilities that ancient people cannot easily explain. They appear to recognize patterns. They learn from experience. They observe human behavior with unsettling attentiveness. Across northern Europe and parts of Asia, ravens become linked to wisdom, prophecy, and hidden knowledge. In Norse tradition many centuries later, ravens accompany Odin, serving as symbols of observation and memory. While such beliefs belong to a later period, they likely draw upon much older associations between ravens and mysterious forms of intelligence. Birds are not the only creatures believed to cross boundaries. Serpents occupy an equally powerful position. Few animals inspire stronger emotional reactions. Humans appear biologically predisposed to notice snakes quickly. Modern research suggests that primates evolved heightened awareness of serpents because of the dangers they pose. Ancient people certainly do not need scientific studies to appreciate their significance. Venomous snakes can kill swiftly. They emerge from hidden places without warning. They disappear underground and reappear seemingly at will. Yet serpents are not sacred merely because they are dangerous. They possess characteristics that seem deeply symbolic. Most notably, they shed their skin. To many ancient observers, this process resembles transformation or rebirth. A snake appears to discard its old self and emerge renewed. In societies concerned with mortality, regeneration, and cycles of nature, such behavior carries profound meaning. Across Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, Greece, and numerous other regions, serpents become associated with immortality, wisdom, healing, creation, and destruction. Sometimes these meanings coexist within the same culture. The serpent can protect and threaten. It can create life and bring death. It can represent hidden knowledge and dangerous temptation. No single explanation fully accounts for the remarkable persistence of serpent symbolism across human history. Water creatures also acquire reputations as intermediaries between worlds. Ancient people often view rivers, lakes, and seas as mysterious domains. Much of what occurs beneath the water remains invisible. Fish emerge unexpectedly. Crocodiles vanish beneath the surface and reappear without warning. Large aquatic animals seem to belong to another reality altogether. In many cultures, water itself becomes associated with creation, transformation, and the unknown. Creatures inhabiting these environments naturally acquire spiritual significance. Fish symbols appear in religious traditions around the world. River animals are linked to fertility and abundance. Sea creatures become associated with chaos, danger, and cosmic origins. What makes these beliefs particularly intriguing is their consistency across enormous distances. Communities separated by thousands of miles often assign similar meanings to animals occupying comparable ecological roles. Predatory birds become celestial messengers. Serpents become symbols of transformation. Water creatures become linked to hidden realms. Such patterns suggest that sacred animal traditions emerge not only from cultural inheritance, but also from shared human experiences of the natural world. Archaeological evidence provides occasional glimpses into how these beliefs functioned. In some burial sites, animal remains appear alongside human graves in carefully arranged positions. Certain species are selected repeatedly, others are absent. These patterns imply symbolic choices rather than practical disposal. The animals may have served as guides, protectors, companions, or spiritual intermediaries. The evidence remains incomplete, and scholars continue debating specific interpretations. Yet the recurring association between particular animals and ritual contexts is difficult to dismiss. As societies become increasingly complex, these ideas begin influencing mythology on a larger scale. Stories emerge about animals carrying messages from gods. Birds reveal hidden truths. Serpents guard sacred knowledge. Wolves guide heroes through dangerous landscapes. Fish preserve wisdom lost beneath floods. Animals become active participants in cosmological narratives rather than passive symbols. At times, the distinction between animal and deity begins to blur entirely. A creature may represent a god, serve a god, embody a divine force, or transform into a supernatural being depending upon context. Sacred animals become woven into every level of spiritual understanding. They explain natural phenomena, reinforce social values, and provide frameworks for interpreting uncertainty. Yet many of the civilizations that developed these beliefs eventually vanish. Their cities crumble, their languages disappear, their temples fall silent. What survives are fragments, carvings, statues, offerings, and mysterious symbols scattered across archaeological sites. These remnants hint at entire worlds of meaning that are now only partially understood, and among the ruins of those forgotten cities, some of the most extraordinary sacred animal traditions ever created still wait to tell their story. Across the ancient world, cities rise, flourish, and disappear. Some leave behind towering monuments. Others survive only as weathered foundations beneath layers of soil. Entire civilizations vanish, their languages forgotten, and their stories fragmented. Yet among the ruins, one pattern appears with remarkable consistency. Wherever archaeologists uncover traces of these lost societies, animals are often waiting there too, etched into stone, painted on pottery, buried beneath temples, or standing silently in the form of statues worn smooth by centuries of wind and sand. The persistence of sacred animals within these forgotten cultures suggests something profound. Even when political systems differ, languages are unrelated, and landscapes vary dramatically, humans repeatedly turn to animals when trying to understand forces larger than themselves. One of the most intriguing examples comes from the ancient civilization of the Indus Valley, flourishing more than 4,000 years ago across parts of modern-day Pakistan and northwestern India. This civilization builds sophisticated cities with planned streets, drainage systems, and extensive trade networks. Yet unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, its script remains undeciphered. The voices of its people are largely silent. What remains are clues. Thousands of seals have been discovered bearing images of animals. Bulls appear frequently, so do elephants, rhinoceroses, water buffalo, tigers, and other creatures. One particularly famous figure, often called the unicorn by archaeologists, depicts an animal that does not clearly correspond to any known species. Whether it represents a mythical creature, a stylized bull, or something else entirely remains uncertain. Scholars still debate the meaning of these images. Were they religious symbols, marks of identity, trade emblems, administrative tools? The evidence remains incomplete. Yet the sheer prominence of animals suggests they occupied a central place within the symbolic world of the Indus people. Some seals depict a seated figure surrounded by animals, leading certain researchers to speculate about connections to later South Asian religious traditions. Such interpretations remain controversial. No single explanation fully accounts for the imagery. What survives in the archaeological record suggests a complex relationship between humans, animals, and spiritual belief. But many details have been lost to time. Far to the west, another remarkable civilization emerges on the island of Crete. The Minoans develop one of the most sophisticated cultures of the Bronze Age Mediterranean. Their palaces contain colorful frescoes, elaborate architecture, and evidence of extensive maritime trade. Among the most striking themes in Minoan art is the bull. Bulls appear everywhere. They are painted on walls, shaped into ceremonial objects, and incorporated into ritual imagery. Perhaps most famous are scenes showing individuals performing acrobatic leaps over charging bulls. These images have fascinated scholars for generations. Exactly what these scenes represent remains uncertain. Some researchers interpret them as ritual performances. Others see them as symbolic expressions of courage, transformation, or social status. Whatever their purpose, the bull clearly occupies a position of extraordinary importance. The animal's power is unmistakable. Massive muscles, dangerous horns, and explosive movement make it a natural symbol of vitality and strength. Yet Minoan depictions often emphasize interaction rather than domination. Humans are not simply conquering the bull, they are engaging with it in a highly choreographed relationship that appears to carry spiritual significance. The theme resonates far beyond Crete. Centuries later, Greek mythology preserves echoes of sacred bull traditions. Stories involving divine bulls, transformations, and powerful bovine symbolism remain embedded within the cultural memory of the Eastern Mediterranean. Although mythology cannot be treated as straightforward history, it sometimes preserves fragments of older beliefs whose original meanings have faded. Elsewhere, animals become guardians of sacred spaces. Throughout the ancient Near East, monumental sculptures stand watch at temple entrances and city gates. Lions crouch beside roadways. Winged creatures guard thresholds. Bulls support sacred architecture. These figures serve practical symbolic functions. They warn enemies, impress visitors, and communicate power. But they also reflect a deeper idea. Thresholds themselves are dangerous places in many ancient belief systems. A doorway marks a transition between one space and another. A temple entrance separates ordinary life from sacred territory. A city gate divides civilization from wilderness. Animals that guard these boundaries often possess qualities associated with vigilance, strength, or supernatural perception. Their presence transforms architecture into something more than stone and wood. They become participants in ritual experience. The importance of sacred animals is equally evident in the Americas. Long before European contact, civilizations across Mesoamerica and South America develop rich traditions centered on powerful creatures. Jaguars, eagles, serpents, and other animals occupy prominent positions within religious systems. The jaguar is particularly significant. Stealthy, powerful, and capable of moving through dense forests almost invisibly, the jaguar inspires both fear and admiration. Its ability to hunt at night associates it with darkness, mystery, and hidden power. Across multiple cultures, jaguar symbolism becomes linked to rulership, warfare, and spiritual transformation. Archaeological discoveries reveal rulers wearing jaguar imagery, priests incorporating jaguar symbolism into ceremonies, and sacred spaces decorated with feline motifs. The animal's presence extends far beyond artistic decoration. It becomes woven into concepts of authority and cosmic order. Meanwhile, feathered serpents emerge as some of the most influential sacred beings in the ancient Americas, combining the serpent's connection to earth with the bird's connection to sky. These composite creatures embody the union of different realms. The symbolism is elegant and powerful. Earth and heaven meet within a single sacred form. The recurrence of such hybrid creatures across the world is striking. Ancient people frequently combine animals to express ideas that no single creature can fully represent. A winged lion, a feathered serpent, or a human-headed bull allows cultures to communicate complex spiritual concepts through familiar forms. What makes these forgotten civilizations particularly fascinating is how much remains uncertain. Unlike Egypt, whose hieroglyphs can be read, many ancient cultures leave behind symbols that resist easy interpretation. Archaeologists uncover artifacts but often lack the written explanations that would clarify their meanings. As a result, sacred animal traditions sometimes remain tantalizingly mysterious. A carved jaguar may represent a god, a ruler, an ancestor, a clan symbol, or several of these simultaneously. A serpent motif may signify fertility, protection, cosmic renewal, or local mythology. The evidence rarely provides complete certainty. Yet despite these uncertainties, a larger pattern becomes increasingly visible. Again and again, sacred animals help ancient societies organize their understanding of reality. They explain invisible forces, they structure rituals, they connect communities to landscapes, they provide symbols capable of expressing ideas too large or abstract for ordinary language. And nowhere is this relationship more intimate than among the hunters who depend directly upon animals for survival. For them, sacred creatures are not distant symbols carved onto temple walls. They are living beings whose deaths sustain human life, creating one of the deepest and most complicated relationships in all of human history. Long before great temples rise above river valleys and long before priests develop elaborate systems of ritual, there are hunters standing quietly at the edge of forests, grasslands, and frozen plains. Their lives depend upon animals in the most direct way imaginable. Meat provides nourishment, hides become clothing and shelter, bones are transformed into tools, sinew becomes cordage, antlers become weapons. Every successful hunt means survival. Every failed hunt carries risk. Yet the archaeological record reveals something surprising. Many hunting societies do not treat animals merely as resources. Instead, they often develop traditions of respect, gratitude, and spiritual obligation toward the very creatures they kill. To modern observers, this may appear contradictory. How can a society both revere and hunt an animal? How can a creature be sacred while simultaneously serving as food? The answer lies within a worldview fundamentally different from many modern assumptions. For numerous ancient and traditional cultures, the act of hunting is not viewed as a simple exercise of dominance. It is understood as participation in a larger cycle of life and death. Humans require animals to survive. Animals, in turn, occupy positions within a living system governed by forces greater than any individual hunter. What survives in the archaeological and ethnographic record suggests that many societies attempt to maintain balance within this relationship. Evidence for such beliefs appears surprisingly early. At various prehistoric sites across Eurasia, archaeologists discover animal remains that seem to have received unusual treatment. Certain skulls are placed in special locations. Bones are arranged carefully rather than discarded randomly. Some caves contain concentrations of specific animal remains that appear ceremonial rather than practical. One of the most debated examples involves bears. Throughout northern regions of Europe and Asia, bear remains occasionally appear in contexts suggesting ritual attention. Skulls may be positioned deliberately. Bones may be separated from ordinary refuse deposits. The evidence remains incomplete, and interpretations vary considerably. Some researchers caution against reading too much symbolism into these finds. Others believe they reflect early forms of bear reverence stretching back thousands of years. Whatever the exact explanation, later traditions among indigenous peoples of Siberia and parts of northern Europe provide intriguing parallels. In some communities, bears are regarded almost as relatives. They are powerful, intelligent, and strangely human-like in certain respects. They can stand upright. They use their forelimbs with surprising dexterity. They eat many of the same foods humans consume. Their winter hibernation and spring emergence resemble death and rebirth. Because of these qualities, hunting a bear often involves ritual obligations. Special ceremonies may accompany the hunt. Songs, offerings, or prayers may be performed. The animal's spirit is treated with respect. Hunters sometimes express gratitude rather than triumph. Scholars debate how far such traditions extend into prehistory, but they illustrate an important principle. Sacred status does not necessarily protect an animal from being hunted. In many cases, Reverence emerges precisely because the relationship is so important. The same pattern appears among societies dependent upon large herbivores. Across the Arctic and subarctic regions, reindeer and caribou become central to survival. In the North American plains, bison sustain entire cultures. Throughout various parts of Eurasia, deer and elk occupy similar roles. These animals provide far more than food. A single large animal can supply materials for clothing, shelter, tools, containers, and countless everyday necessities. Dependence on such creatures creates emotional, economic, and spiritual connections that are difficult to overstate. Many traditions describe animals as willing participants in the cycle of life. According to these beliefs, successful hunters are not merely skilled, they are respectful. Animals allow themselves to be taken when proper relationships are maintained. Failure to observe ritual obligations may lead to scarcity, bad luck, or ecological imbalance. Modern scientific perspectives differ from such interpretations, yet they reveal sophisticated attempts to understand sustainability and human responsibility within natural systems. These ideas become especially important in environments where resources are limited. A hunting community that overexploits animal populations risks catastrophe. Ritual practices encouraging respect and restraint may help reinforce behaviors beneficial to long-term survival. Some anthropologists argue that sacred traditions surrounding animals sometimes serve ecological functions, though no single explanation fully accounts for every example. The evidence suggests that practical concerns and spiritual beliefs often reinforce one another. Perhaps nowhere is this more visible than in prehistoric cave art. Deep inside caves across Europe, ancient artists create extraordinary images of bison, horses, deer, mammoths, lions, and other animals. Some paintings are located far from natural light, requiring considerable effort to access. The placement itself suggests that something more than decoration is occurring. For generations, researchers have debated the purpose of these images. Were they hunting magic intended to ensure success? Were they expressions of spiritual experience? Did they preserve myths, teach knowledge, or record visions? The evidence remains frustratingly incomplete. What survives in the record suggests that animals occupy a central role within whatever symbolic systems these artists are creating. Human figures are often rare. Animals dominate the walls. This imbalance may reveal something important about prehistoric consciousness. For people living in close relationship with nature, animals are not peripheral elements of existence. They are among the primary forces shaping daily life. Their movements influence migration. Their abundance affects survival. Their behavior provides information about weather, predators, and environmental change. To understand animals is, in many ways, to understand the world itself. The emotional complexity of hunting further deepens these relationships. A hunter may spend days tracking a particular animal. He studies its habits, follows its movements, and learns its behavior intimately. Success requires empathy as much as skill. The hunter must think like the animal. This process creates a curious form of connection. The animal becomes both opponent and teacher. Many traditional stories reflect this duality. Sacred animals are often admired precisely because they possess qualities humans wish to emulate. Wolves demonstrate cooperation, deer embody alertness, bears represent strength and endurance. Eagles symbolize vision and perspective. The act of hunting does not erase these qualities. Instead, it highlights them. Even after death, the animal's significance continues. Bones may be treated respectfully. Certain parts may be preserved. Stories may be told about the hunt. Rituals may acknowledge the sacrifice involved. In such contexts, reverence and killing are not viewed as opposites. They are interconnected aspects of a single relationship. Yet among all sacred animals, one creature occupies an especially unusual position. Unlike the great herbivores that provide food or the predators that inspire fear, this animal often evokes both fascination and unease simultaneously. It appears without warning, it vanishes into hidden places, it sheds its skin and seems reborn. Across continents and thousands of years, humans repeatedly invest it with extraordinary significance. The serpent is about to become one of the most enduring sacred symbols in human history. Serpents slither through history with a strange combination of allure and terror. Their sinewy bodies move silently across landscapes, through grass, sand, and water. They can hide in plain sight, vanish under rocks, or coil in shadows where humans cannot reach them. Venomous species can kill instantly, others constrict with crushing strength. For millennia, humans observe these creatures and feel simultaneously drawn to and repelled by them. Across cultures, the snake emerges as a potent symbol of transformation, danger, and hidden knowledge. The serpent's ability to shed its skin makes it particularly fascinating. Ancient observers see in this biological process a kind of rebirth. A snake appears to discard its old self and emerge renewed, almost immortal. In the hot deserts of Egypt, serpents are intertwined with concepts of eternity and protection. The uraeus, a stylized cobra, adorns pharaohs' crowns, symbolizing divine authority and guardianship. To wear it is to draw power from the snake itself, to position oneself within a continuum of cosmic forces that humans cannot fully command. Further east, serpents occupy an equally revered position. In Mesopotamia, dragons and snake-like creatures appear in myths and temple art. They guard treasures, maintain cosmic order, and sometimes embody chaos itself. The duality of the snake as both protective and threatening reflects a recurring human fascination with creatures that exist on the border between life and death, safety and danger, the visible and the hidden. In South Asia, serpents, or nagas, inhabit rivers, forests, and caves, linking water and earth with the divine. They are protectors of treasure and knowledge, sometimes benevolent, sometimes capricious. Rituals often involve the offerings to these creatures, acknowledging their power and seeking their favor. Their image permeates temples, sculptures, and sacred texts. Across centuries, the reverence for serpents persists, a testimony to the enduring human need to interpret the world through living symbols. Even in the Americas, snake symbolism thrives. Feathered serpents combine qualities of earth and sky, creating a creature that embodies duality, movement, and transcendence. In Mesoamerica, the god Quetzalcoatl, a feathered serpent, occupies a central place in cosmology, ritual, and governance. Its form bridges realms and demonstrates how animals can become conduits of meaning far beyond their physical existence. This fascination is not limited to mythology and religion. Archaeological evidence suggests that humans often incorporated snakes into practical and ceremonial life. Bones, skins, and representations appear in tombs, temples, and shrines. Certain caves contain images of serpents alongside other sacred animals, suggesting that the same creatures that inspire fear also guide rituals, mediate knowledge, and symbolize profound human concerns: life, death, fertility, and transformation. What is striking across these examples is the persistence of patterns. Dangerous, elusive, or transformative animals often acquire spiritual significance. Birds, serpents, large predators, and creatures that occupy hidden spaces are consistently elevated to roles of mediation between worlds. In each case, humans recognize qualities in the animal that resonate with concepts they cannot fully articulate: the impermanence of life, the unpredictability of nature, the potential for renewal, the presence of unseen forces. Even within a single culture, these meanings can be complex and multi-layered. A snake might be both protective and lethal, a symbol of wisdom and a reminder of mortality. A lion might represent courage in one context, chaos in another. Sacred animals often embody contradictions, reflecting the multifaceted realities of human existence and the natural world. This flexibility allows their symbolism to endure, adapt, and migrate across regions and generations. The serpent, in particular, exemplifies the human tendency to assign spiritual significance to what eludes full understanding. Its slippery, often hidden presence, its periodic shedding, its lethal potential, and its sudden appearances make it a natural candidate for sacred association. Across continents and millennia, humans have turned to the serpent to express ideas that are difficult to put into words: regeneration, mortality, wisdom, and the hidden order of life itself. By tracing the reverence for serpents, we glimpse a broader pattern in human belief. Animals that challenge, inspire, or exceed ordinary perception often become intermediaries between the tangible world and the mysteries that lie beyond. They serve as messengers, guardians, and teachers. They inhabit myths, rituals, and social systems. They survive in cultural memory long after the civilizations that first revered them have vanished. And yet, serpents are not alone in this dual role. Across the ancient world, a collection of less obvious animals emerges: creatures whose mysterious behaviors, intelligence, or unusual habits capture human imagination and persist as symbols of mystery, knowledge, or spiritual potency. Not every sacred animal dominates the landscape through sheer size or strength. Some earn their place in human imagination through behaviors that seem unusual, intelligent, or difficult to explain. These creatures often inspire a different kind of reverence, less focused on power and more concerned with mystery. They become associated with hidden knowledge, omens, transformation, and forces operating just beyond ordinary perception. Across the ancient world, a remarkable collection of animals acquires sacred significance not because they are the strongest creatures humans encounter, but because they appear to know something humans do not. Among these enigmatic animals, few are as widespread as the raven. A raven is impossible to ignore for long. Its glossy black feathers absorb sunlight. Its intelligence is immediately apparent. It observes. It remembers. It solves problems. Modern scientific research confirms that ravens possess impressive cognitive abilities, capable of planning, recognizing individual humans, and using tools in certain circumstances. Ancient peoples, lacking the language of neuroscience, nevertheless recognize something unusual about these birds. Ravens seem watchful. They appear near battlefields, settlements, hunting grounds, and places where death has recently occurred. They arrive quickly, often before humans fully understand what has happened. To many cultures, this creates an impression that ravens possess privileged access to hidden information. Throughout northern Europe, Siberia, and parts of Asia, ravens become associated with prophecy, wisdom, and communication between worlds. Their dark coloration further enhances their reputation. Black animals frequently attract symbolic significance because they stand apart visually. Night, darkness, and the unknown become linked with creatures that move comfortably within shadowed environments. Yet ravens are not merely symbols of death. In many traditions, they are also creators, guides, and tricksters. Their intelligence makes them difficult to categorize. They can seem wise one moment and mischievous the next. This ambiguity allows them to occupy multiple symbolic roles simultaneously. Another creature that repeatedly appears in sacred traditions is the wolf. For much of human history, wolves are among humanity's most formidable competitors. They hunt many of the same animals. They live in organized social groups. They communicate effectively and cooperate during hunts. To prehistoric observers, wolves may have seemed strangely familiar. The relationship between humans and wolves is exceptionally complex. On one hand, wolves threaten livestock and occasionally humans. On the other, they demonstrate qualities many societies admire: loyalty, endurance, courage, and cooperation. This duality contributes to their sacred status across numerous cultures. Some traditions portray wolves as ancestral beings. Others view them as guides capable of leading individuals through dangerous spiritual journeys. In several mythologies, wolves accompany gods, heroes, or founders of civilizations. The animal's social structure, resembling aspects of human communities, likely contributes to these associations. Remarkably, the relationship between humans and wolves eventually produces one of the most consequential developments in history: the domestication of dogs. The process unfolds over thousands of years and remains the subject of active research. Scholars still debate the precise pathways involved. What appears increasingly clear is that humans and wolves develop a unique partnership, unlike any other relationship between people and wild animals. This partnership further blurs the boundaries between sacred and practical significance. Dogs become companions, protectors, hunters, and symbols of loyalty. In some cultures, they guard the dead. In others, they guide souls into the afterlife. Their close association with humans allows them to acquire spiritual roles unavailable to most other species. Cats present a different mystery. Unlike dogs, cats never become fully subordinate to human control. Even after domestication, they retain an aura of independence. They move silently. They hunt efficiently. Their eyes reflect light in darkness. Their behavior can seem unpredictable. These characteristics contribute to their sacred status in several societies, most famously in Egypt, but not exclusively there. Ancient observers often associate cats with vigilance and hidden perception. They appear aware of things beyond ordinary human senses, whether stalking prey or staring intently into darkness. Cats create the impression of attentiveness directed toward realities humans cannot fully perceive. The owl inspires similar reactions. Active at night, equipped with extraordinary vision and hearing, owls move almost silently through darkness. For many ancient societies, nocturnal animals naturally acquire connections to mystery. The night conceals dangers, spirits, dreams, and unknown forces. Creatures that navigate it successfully appear to possess special knowledge. Consequently, owls become associated with wisdom in some traditions and with death or ill fortune in others. Their symbolic meanings vary dramatically from culture to culture, yet their sacred significance remains remarkably widespread. The fox offers another fascinating example. Across Eurasia, foxes are admired for intelligence and adaptability. They survive in environments ranging from forests to grasslands and even near human settlements. Their ability to evade capture earns them reputations as tricksters and shapeshifters. Many traditional stories portray foxes as beings capable of crossing boundaries between ordinary and supernatural realities. Whether these tales emerge from direct observation or cultural imagination remains difficult to determine. What is clear is that unusual behavior often translates into spiritual significance. This pattern extends even to insects. Although large animals dominate most discussions of sacred creatures, smaller species sometimes acquire extraordinary importance. Bees, for example, inspire admiration across numerous civilizations. Their highly organized colonies, production of honey, and apparent cooperation seem almost miraculous. Ancient people observed thousands of individuals working together toward common goals without obvious leadership visible to human eyes. Honey itself contributes to their reputation. Rare, nutritious, and naturally preserved. Honey appears special in a world lacking refined sugar. It becomes associated with abundance, divine favor, and immortality. In some cultures, bees are viewed as messengers between human and divine realms. Scarab beetles occupy a similarly important position in Egypt. To modern observers, a dung beetle may seem an unlikely candidate for sacred status. Yet Egyptian observers notice something extraordinary. Scarabs roll balls of dung across the ground and lay eggs within them. New beetles eventually emerge. Without knowledge of insect reproduction, this process appears mysterious. The beetle seems capable of generating life from seemingly lifeless material. Combined with its habit of rolling spherical objects resembling the sun, the scarab becomes associated with creation, renewal, and cosmic cycles. This example reveals an important truth about sacred animals. Humans do not assign significance solely based on objective biological importance. Perception matters. Behaviors interpreted as mysterious, symbolic, or extraordinary often prove more influential than ecological realities. The sacred animal traditions of the ancient world therefore function as windows into human thought itself. They reveal what people notice, fear, admire, and struggle to explain. They expose patterns of attention shaped by survival, curiosity, and imagination. Yet interpretation alone is not enough. To understand how deeply these beliefs influence ancient societies, researchers must turn to physical evidence. Beneath deserts, forests, mountains, and forgotten cities lie the traces of rituals, offerings, burials, and ceremonies that transformed sacred animals from symbols into active participants within religious life. And it is within the earth itself that some of the most remarkable evidence begins to emerge. For centuries, sacred animals existed primarily in stories, myths, and the scattered accounts of ancient writers. Then archaeologists began digging. Beneath layers of sand, beneath collapsed temples and forgotten settlements, evidence emerged that transformed understanding of the ancient world. What had once seemed symbolic or legendary suddenly acquired physical form. Bones appeared where none were expected. Entire cemeteries filled with animal remains surfaced from the earth. Shrines contained offerings carefully arranged thousands of years earlier. Statues stood watch over ruins long abandoned by the people who created them. The ground itself began preserving a record of humanity's extraordinary relationship with sacred creatures. Some of the most dramatic discoveries came from Egypt, when archaeologists first encountered vast underground galleries packed with mummified animals. The scale seemed almost unbelievable. Millions of creatures had been preserved over centuries. Cats, ibises, crocodiles, falcons, dogs, baboons, fish, and countless others filled catacombs stretching beneath the desert. The numbers were staggering. At certain sites, entire tunnels contained layer upon layer of animal mummies stacked in niches or placed within ceramic containers. Some were carefully wrapped and elaborately prepared. Others appeared simpler, perhaps produced more rapidly to meet demand from pilgrims seeking religious offerings. These discoveries revealed that sacred animals were not peripheral elements of Egyptian religion. They were central participants in an enormous ritual system involving breeding, care, sacrifice, preservation, and pilgrimage. Yet the animal mummies also created new mysteries. Some contained complete animals, others held only partial remains. A number contained little more than feathers, bones, or fragments. Advanced imaging technologies used in recent decades have revealed surprising variation inside supposedly similar packages. Scholars still debate what these differences mean. Some may reflect shortages, others may represent symbolic offerings rather than complete animals. The evidence remains incomplete, reminding researchers that even the best preserved archaeological sites rarely provide simple answers. Elsewhere in Egypt, archaeologists uncovered temples dedicated to specific sacred species. Crocodile cult centers contain evidence of carefully maintained animals. Falcon remains appear in large numbers near sites associated with Horus. Sacred bulls receive elaborate burial treatment that rivals the funerary practices of important humans. Each discovery reinforces a remarkable conclusion. Ancient people invested extraordinary resources into relationships with animals they regarded as spiritually significant. Egypt is not unique. Across Europe, archaeologists encounter evidence suggesting ritual treatment of animal remains dating back thousands of years. Certain caves contain carefully arranged skulls. Some settlements reveal deposits of specific species placed in unusual locations. Animal bones appear beneath structures, near entrances, and within ceremonial contexts where ordinary food waste would not be expected. Interpreting these discoveries is rarely straightforward. A bone placed in a particular location may reflect ritual activity. It may also result from practical behavior that modern researchers misunderstand. Archaeology constantly balances evidence and interpretation. Nevertheless, recurring patterns are difficult to dismiss. When the same species appears repeatedly in ceremonial contexts across multiple sites and generations, intentional significance becomes increasingly likely. One particularly intriguing category of evidence involves foundation deposits. Throughout various ancient cultures, animals are buried beneath buildings, walls, gates, or other important structures. Sometimes entire skeletons are used. In other cases, only selected parts appear. The purpose of these deposits remains debated. Some scholars interpret them as offerings intended to protect structures. Others see them as acts of consecration, marking the transition from ordinary ground to sacred space. No single explanation fully accounts for every example. What survives in the archaeological record suggests that animals often played active roles in defining relationships between communities and their built environments. The practice appears in different forms across large geographical areas. Dogs are occasionally buried beneath thresholds. Horses appear in ceremonial contexts. Birds are incorporated into ritual deposits. The selection of species often seems deliberate, reflecting local beliefs and symbolic associations. In the ancient Americas, evidence for sacred animals emerges through art as much as through skeletal remains. Monumental sculptures depict jaguars, serpents, eagles, and other creatures with extraordinary attention to detail. Temple complexes incorporate animal imagery into architecture itself. Ceremonial objects combine human and animal characteristics in ways suggesting spiritual transformation. Some of the most fascinating discoveries involve burials. Elite individuals are occasionally interred alongside animal remains or adorned with costumes incorporating feathers, claws, teeth, and skins. These materials likely carry symbolic significance connected to status, identity, or spiritual power. A ruler buried with jaguar imagery is not merely displaying wealth. He may be expressing a connection to qualities embodied by the animal itself: strength, stealth, authority, or supernatural potency. Similar patterns emerge in many parts of the world. Ancient graves frequently contain evidence of meaningful relationships between humans and animals. Dogs are buried beside people, horses accompany elite warriors, birds appear within ceremonial contexts, animal figurines are placed among grave goods. These practices suggest that sacred animals continue playing important roles even after death. Some may have been viewed as companions in the afterlife. Others may have served protective functions. Still others may have symbolized social identity or spiritual affiliation. The evidence rarely tells researchers exactly what ancient people believed. It does, however, reveal what they considered important enough to preserve through ritual. Advances in scientific techniques have expanded understanding considerably. DNA analysis helps identify species with greater accuracy. Isotope studies reveal information about diet and movement. Radiocarbon dating establishes timelines. CT scanning allows researchers to examine mummies and artifacts without damaging them. These tools provide remarkable insights, but they also expose new complexities. A sacred animal may have lived under unusual conditions. It may have been transported long distances. It may have consumed specialized diets reflecting ritual care. Each discovery generates additional questions. One particularly revealing lesson emerges repeatedly. Sacred animals are not abstract concepts. They are real creatures living within real ecosystems. Their spiritual significance exists alongside biological realities. Understanding ancient beliefs therefore requires attention to both symbolism and ecology. A crocodile cult cannot exist without crocodiles. A sacred bull tradition depends upon access to cattle. A jaguar-centered religious system reflects the presence of jaguars within the surrounding environment. This connection between belief and landscape becomes increasingly apparent as archaeologists compare sites across regions. Sacred animals often reflect the creatures people encounter most frequently, depend upon most heavily, or fear most deeply. The archaeological record therefore preserves more than religion. It preserves relationships. It reveals how humans understood their place within larger ecological systems. It documents attempts to negotiate uncertainty, danger, abundance, and mortality through interactions with the animal world. Yet bones, statues, and mummies can only tell part of the story. To move closer to understanding what sacred animals truly meant, researchers must examine the evidence in even greater detail. They must ask not only where animals were buried or depicted, but what those remains actually reveal about ritual behavior, social organization, and belief itself. And when the bones are examined closely, some long-held assumptions begin to change. The moment an archaeologist uncovers an animal skeleton inside an ancient temple or burial site, an immediate temptation arises. The discovery seems to tell a story. A sacred cat must have been worshipped. A buried horse must have been honored. A carefully placed bird skeleton must have served some ritual purpose. Yet archaeology rarely rewards simple conclusions. Bones are evidence, but they do not speak directly. Everything depends on context. Over the last century, researchers have learned that understanding sacred animals requires far more than identifying species. It demands careful examination of age, diet, injuries, burial patterns, geographic origin, and even microscopic traces preserved within the remains themselves. The resulting picture is often far more complicated than earlier generations imagined. Consider the vast animal cemeteries of ancient Egypt. For many years, scholars assumed that all mummified sacred animals had lived privileged lives under special protection. Modern investigations reveal a more nuanced reality. Some animals clearly receive exceptional treatment. Certain sacred bulls, for example, are cared for with remarkable attention. They consume carefully managed diets and are buried with elaborate ceremony. Other animals tell a different story. Studies of some cat and bird mummies indicate that many creatures are raised specifically for ritual purposes. Some appear to have died young. Others show signs of breeding programs designed to support large-scale religious demand. This does not necessarily diminish their sacred status. Rather, it reveals how deeply sacred animal traditions become integrated into economic and social systems. Religious devotion, animal husbandry, and regional economies can operate together within a single cultural framework. The evidence challenges modern assumptions about what sacredness should look like. Ancient societies often understand sacred relationships differently than modern observers expect. A similar complexity appears in horse burials across Eurasia. When archaeologists uncover horses interred alongside elite individuals, the symbolism seems obvious. Horses represent wealth, status, mobility, and military power. Yet detailed analysis often reveals additional layers. Some horses receive careful treatment suggesting emotional or ceremonial significance. Others appear selected according to age, sex, or physical characteristics. Occasionally, animals buried together share traits indicating deliberate choices rather than random selection. What survives in the record suggests that horses function simultaneously as practical assets, status symbols, and sacred companions. No single explanation fully accounts for every burial. The same pattern appears again and again. Dogs provide another revealing example. Throughout human history, dogs occupy a unique position among animals. Unlike livestock, they are not primarily valued for meat, hides, or labor. Unlike predators, they are not feared competitors. Instead, they exist within intimate social relationships with humans. Archaeological evidence demonstrates that this bond extends deep into prehistory. Some of the oldest known dog burials show signs of remarkable care. Individuals are interred with animals in ways suggesting companionship rather than simple utility. In certain cases, dogs receive their own graves complete with ceremonial treatment. The evidence remains incomplete, but these discoveries hint at emotional connections familiar even today. Ancient people do not merely use dogs. They form relationships with them. Such findings remind researchers that sacred animals are not always symbols of distant divine forces. Sometimes they represent loyalty, partnership, and shared experience. Scientific analysis has also transformed understanding of animal sacrifice. For generations, discussions of sacrifice often relied heavily on written sources or artistic depictions. Today, archaeologists can examine cut marks, burning patterns, bone fractures, and chemical signatures to reconstruct events with remarkable precision. The results reveal tremendous diversity. Some sacrifices involve carefully selected animals. Others occur on a large scale during major ceremonies. Certain species appear repeatedly in particular ritual contexts, while others are conspicuously absent. These patterns help researchers identify cultural priorities. An animal chosen repeatedly for ritual use likely carries symbolic significance beyond its economic value. Conversely, species that are abundant in daily life may play surprisingly minor roles in ceremonial settings. One particularly fascinating area of study involves animal diets. Through isotope analysis, scientists can determine what many ancient animals consumed during their lives. These investigations occasionally reveal surprising distinctions. Certain sacred animals appear to receive specialized feeding regimens. Others are transported from distant regions. Some consume diets markedly different from ordinary animals of the same species. Such findings suggest deliberate management and investment. Sacred animals are not always selected randomly from surrounding populations. They may be raised, protected, or prepared according to specific religious requirements. The bones also reveal evidence of movement. Ancient trade networks transport animals across impressive distances. Exotic species occasionally appear far outside their natural habitats. Feathers, skins, teeth, and other animal materials travel between civilizations. These exchanges contribute to the spread of symbolism. A creature known originally within one region can acquire significance elsewhere through trade, diplomacy, migration, or conquest. The sacred animal traditions of the ancient world are therefore more interconnected than they sometimes appear. Yet some discoveries challenge assumptions in unexpected ways. Not every animal found in a ritual context is necessarily sacred. A species may appear because it is readily available. It may serve practical ceremonial functions. It may be associated with feasting rather than worship. Distinguishing between these possibilities requires extraordinary caution. Archaeologists constantly balance evidence against interpretation. The desire to tell compelling stories must be restrained by what the material actually supports. This caution has become increasingly important as new discoveries attract public attention. Popular media sometimes presents sacred animal findings as definitive proof of mysterious cults or forgotten religions. Reality is usually more complex. The archaeological record preserves fragments rather than complete narratives. Scholars must reconstruct belief systems from incomplete evidence. They work with broken bones, damaged inscriptions, eroded carvings, and scattered artifacts. Every conclusion remains provisional, subject to revision as new information emerges. Yet despite these limitations, a consistent pattern continues to appear. Animals occupy positions of extraordinary importance within ancient societies. They are woven into religion, politics, economics, identity, and daily life. They help structure relationships between communities and landscapes. They provide symbols through which people interpret existence itself. The challenge is explaining why. Why do sacred animal traditions emerge independently in so many places? Why do certain species repeatedly acquire spiritual significance while others do not? Why do humans so often turn to animals when attempting to understand forces beyond ordinary experience? These questions have generated some of the most important debates in archaeology, anthropology, psychology, and religious studies. And while no single theory has solved the mystery completely, several competing explanations offer intriguing possibilities. Why do humans create sacred animals? It is a deceptively simple question. After thousands of years of mythology, ritual, art, and belief, scholars still cannot point to a single answer that explains every culture, every species, and every sacred tradition. The evidence stretches across continents and millennia. The patterns are unmistakable, yet the reasons behind them remain surprisingly difficult to pin down. Instead of one explanation, researchers have developed several. Each illuminates part of the mystery. Together, they reveal how deeply sacred animals are connected to the human experience itself. One of the oldest explanations focuses on survival. According to this view, sacred animals emerge because certain species are simply too important to ignore. They feed communities, they threaten them, they shape migration patterns and economic systems. Over time, practical importance becomes symbolic importance. The logic is compelling. A hunting society dependent upon reindeer, bison, or deer naturally pays close attention to those animals. Their well-being determines human well-being. Rituals develop around successful hunts. Stories explain relationships between people and prey. Sacred traditions reinforce respect for creatures essential to survival. Similarly, agricultural societies often elevate animals connected to fertility, abundance, and seasonal cycles. Cattle, sheep, goats, and birds become woven into religious systems because they occupy central roles in daily life. There is considerable evidence supporting this perspective, yet it does not explain everything. Many sacred animals are not economically essential. Lions, crocodiles, wolves, and serpents often pose dangers rather than providing resources. Some sacred creatures are rare, difficult to encounter, or even actively feared. Clearly, survival alone cannot account for the entire phenomenon. A second explanation focuses on psychology. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. The human brain constantly searches for meaning, agency, and relationships within the surrounding environment. This tendency has obvious advantages. Recognizing patterns helps people predict danger, locate resources, and navigate complex social situations. However, the same mental processes can also encourage symbolic thinking. When an eagle appears before an important event, people remember it. When unusual animal behavior coincides with drought, abundance, or conflict, connections may be drawn. Over generations, such associations become embedded within stories and traditions. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as agency detection, the tendency to perceive intention and significance even where evidence remains uncertain. In ancient environments filled with unpredictability, this tendency may have been especially powerful. A sudden migration, an unexpected predator encounter, or a dramatic natural event could seem charged with meaning. Animals, highly visible and behaviorally complex, become ideal carriers for such interpretations. Yet psychology alone also falls short. If sacred animals were merely products of cognitive bias, it would be difficult to explain the extraordinary consistency and sophistication of many traditions. Ancient people are not simply imagining random meanings. They are constructing elaborate systems that endure for centuries. This brings scholars to a third explanation: symbolism. According to this view, animals become sacred because they embody qualities humans recognize and value. The lion represents strength. The eagle represents vision. The serpent represents transformation. The wolf represents cooperation. The bull represents fertility and vitality. These associations emerge from direct observation. Humans watch animals and identify characteristics that resonate with social ideals, fears, or aspirations. Sacred symbolism then transforms biological traits into cultural meaning. This explanation accounts for many recurring patterns. It helps explain why similar species acquire comparable symbolic roles across different civilizations. However, symbolism raises another question. Why are humans so inclined to express abstract ideas through animals in the first place? Part of the answer may lie in a fourth theory centered on relationships. Anthropologists increasingly emphasize that humans evolved within ecosystems dominated by other species. For most of history, people lived in constant interaction with animals. They hunted them, avoided them, learned from them, and depended upon them. Animals were not background scenery. They were active participants in daily life. Modern urban societies often separate humans from nature physically and psychologically. Ancient societies generally did not enjoy such separation. The boundary between human and animal worlds was far thinner. As a result, relationships with animals carried emotional weight. People admired certain species. They feared others. They competed with predators. They cared for domestic animals. They observed behaviors that seemed intelligent, purposeful, and sometimes eerily familiar. Sacred traditions may therefore emerge from attempts to understand these relationships rather than merely control them. This perspective has gained increasing support because it helps explain the complexity of sacred animal beliefs. Many traditions emphasize reciprocity rather than domination. Animals are respected partners, teachers, ancestors, or intermediaries. They are not simply symbols imposed upon nature. They are participants within a shared world. Another influential explanation focuses on social cohesion. Religious systems help communities cooperate. Shared beliefs create collective identity. Sacred animals can reinforce these functions. A community associated with a particular animal gains a powerful symbol of belonging. Rituals centered on sacred creatures strengthen social bonds. Myths provide common narratives linking individuals to larger groups. This may help explain why animal symbolism often becomes tied to clans, kingdoms, and political institutions. The sacred animal is not only a spiritual figure, it is also a social one. Yet even these theories together leave certain questions unanswered. Why do serpents appear so consistently across cultures? Why do birds so often become messengers between worlds? Why are predators repeatedly associated with power and authority? Why do humans continue assigning profound significance to animals even after developing sophisticated philosophical and theological systems? No single explanation fully accounts for these patterns. The mystery persists because sacred animals emerge from multiple layers of human experience simultaneously. They are ecological realities. They are psychological triggers. They are social symbols. They are spiritual metaphors. They are companions and competitors. They are sources of fear, admiration, nourishment, and wonder. Perhaps this complexity explains their endurance. Simple ideas rarely survive for thousands of years. Sacred animals persist because they connect to something fundamental within the human condition. They allow people to think about life through forms that are tangible and familiar. A lion can express power more vividly than an abstract concept. A serpent can embody transformation more effectively than a philosophical argument. An eagle soaring overhead can evoke transcendence in ways language sometimes struggles to match. The sacred animal becomes a bridge. It links the visible world to invisible ideas. It transforms everyday encounters into opportunities for meaning. And for centuries, that bridge proves remarkably resilient. Yet even the most enduring traditions eventually face change. Empires rise and fall. Religions spread. Old beliefs are challenged by new ones. These sacred creatures that once stood at the center of entire civilizations begin confronting a world that is rapidly transforming around them. Nothing in history remains unchanged forever. The temples of mighty kingdoms eventually crumble. Languages disappear. Trade routes shift. Rivers alter their courses. Entire civilizations fade into memory. Sacred animals, despite their immense importance, are not immune to these transformations. For thousands of years they stand at the center of religious life, woven into myths, ceremonies, and political power. Yet gradually, often over centuries rather than decades, the world that created them begins to change. The decline of ancient animal cults is rarely sudden. More often, it unfolds as a slow process of adaptation, replacement, and reinterpretation. One of the most important forces behind this transformation is urbanization. As societies become larger and more complex, many people find themselves increasingly removed from direct contact with the natural world. Early farmers still live beside livestock and wildlife. Hunters know the habits of animals intimately, but residents of expanding cities encounter nature differently. Animals remain important, yet they are no longer the immediate presence they once were. A merchant living within crowded city walls experiences the world differently from a hunter tracking game across open landscapes. Religious ideas begin evolving to reflect these new realities. At the same time, political changes reshape spiritual life. Empires often unite diverse populations under centralized authority. In doing so, they encourage broader religious systems capable of integrating many local traditions. Sacred animals do not disappear overnight, but they may lose some of their independence as their symbolism becomes absorbed into larger theological frameworks. Ancient Egypt provides a revealing example. For centuries, animal cults flourished throughout the Nile Valley. Sacred bulls, cats, crocodiles, ibises, and countless other creatures received devotion. Yet Egypt does not exist in isolation. Foreign powers arrive, trade expands, new philosophies circulate. The country becomes part of increasingly interconnected political worlds. Under successive rulers, including the Greeks and later the Romans, traditional Egyptian religion continues, but it also changes. Some sacred animal traditions persist remarkably well, others gradually decline. The process is neither uniform nor simple. What survives in the record suggests a constant negotiation between old beliefs and new circumstances. The sacred animals remain meaningful, but their meanings evolve. A similar pattern appears elsewhere. In Mesopotamia, centuries of conquest and cultural exchange transform religious systems repeatedly. Gods merge with other gods. Symbols acquire new interpretations. Ancient animal imagery remains visible, yet its original context sometimes becomes difficult to recognize. Religious traditions rarely disappear completely. Instead, they are often absorbed. A sacred lion may survive as a symbol of kingship long after its original religious associations have faded. A serpent may retain spiritual significance while acquiring entirely new meanings. Symbols prove more durable than institutions. The rise of major universal religions accelerates these changes. As traditions such as Christianity, Buddhism, and later Islam spread across vast territories, they introduce different understandings of the relationship between humans, animals, and the divine. This does not mean animals lose significance. Far from it. Animals continue appearing in stories, symbolism, and moral teachings. However, they are less often treated as direct embodiments of divine power. The focus shifts toward broader theological principles. In Christian traditions, for example, animals frequently carry symbolic meanings. Lambs represent innocence and sacrifice. Doves symbolize peace and divine presence. Lions convey strength and authority. Yet these creatures generally function as symbols rather than objects of worship. The distinction is important. Sacred animals do not vanish from religious imagination. Their role changes. The same process occurs across much of the world. Ancient traditions are reinterpreted rather than erased. Sometimes older beliefs survive beneath newer ones in subtle ways. A local festival may preserve traces of pre-existing animal symbolism. A folk tale may contain fragments of much older myths. A sacred site may continue attracting visitors even after its original religious purpose has been forgotten. Archaeologists and historians often uncover these hidden continuities. Beneath the surface of later traditions, echoes of ancient animal reverence remain surprisingly resilient. Yet not every sacred animal survives equally well. Some disappear alongside the environments that sustained them. Extinction plays a role in this story. The ancient aurochs, once among the most revered cattle-like creatures in Europe and parts of Asia, vanishes entirely by the 17th century. Lions retreat from much of their former range. Numerous species become rarer as human populations expand. When sacred animals disappear physically, maintaining direct relationships with them becomes increasingly difficult. Their symbolism often survives, but lived experience fades. The lion remains a symbol of courage long after most people have never seen one. The wolf persists in folklore even where wolves have been exterminated. In this way, sacred animals gradually migrate from the landscape into the imagination. Political authorities sometimes contribute deliberately to the decline of animal cults. Rulers seeking religious unity may suppress local traditions. Temples are closed, rituals are prohibited, sacred sites are repurposed. Such actions occur repeatedly throughout history. Yet suppression rarely eliminates beliefs entirely. Human beings have a remarkable capacity for preserving ideas in altered forms. A sacred animal once honored in a temple may reappear in folklore. A forbidden symbol may survive in decorative art. Ancient meanings persist beneath new interpretations. Scholars frequently encounter this phenomenon when examining medieval and early modern traditions. Beneath official religious narratives, older symbolic systems continue influencing cultural practices. The evidence remains incomplete, but the pattern appears widespread. This persistence reveals something important. Sacred animals endure because they address enduring human concerns: power, mortality, transformation, protection, identity, connection to nature. Even when theological systems change, these concerns remain. As a result, animal symbolism proves extraordinarily adaptable. The serpent sheds its old meanings and acquires new ones. The eagle moves from one empire to another. The lion survives as a royal emblem across civilizations separated by centuries. The forms remain recognizable even as interpretations evolve. By the end of antiquity, many of the great animal cults that once dominated entire regions have faded. Their temples are abandoned. Their priests are gone. Their rituals no longer shape daily life. Yet disappearance is not the same as extinction. The sacred animals are preparing for another transformation. They are about to leave the world of formal worship and enter something even more enduring: the collective memory of humanity itself. The temples fall silent, but the animals remain. Long after the priests disappear and the rituals cease, sacred creatures continue moving through human culture in unexpected ways. They survive in stories told beside fires, in symbols carved onto shields, in emblems painted on banners, and eventually in the flags, coats of arms, and national identities of entire countries. The ancient world fades, yet its sacred animals refuse to vanish completely. This persistence is one of the most remarkable aspects of the story. Many civilizations leave behind ruins. Few leave behind symbols that remain instantly recognizable thousands of years later. The lion is among the most successful survivors. Ancient kings once associated themselves with lions because the animal represented strength, courage, authority, and dominion. Those associations prove remarkably durable. Throughout the medieval world and into the modern era, lions appear on royal seals, military standards, noble crests, and national emblems. What is striking is that many societies adopting lion symbolism no longer live near lions. The animal's biological reality becomes less important than its symbolic power. A creature that once roamed the landscapes of the Near East transforms into a universal emblem of leadership and prestige. The eagle follows a similar path. From ancient imperial standards to modern state insignias, eagles remain symbols of vision, sovereignty, and authority. Their ability to soar above ordinary life continues inspiring political and cultural imagination. The connection is ancient. An eagle flying high above the earth naturally suggests perspective unavailable to those below. That symbolism survives across centuries because it remains intuitively understandable. Even today, countless organizations, governments, and institutions continue using eagle imagery to communicate power and aspiration. The sacred bird has outlived the civilizations that first elevated it. Serpents prove even more adaptable. Few symbols have accumulated as many meanings across history. The serpent can represent wisdom, healing, temptation, transformation, eternity, danger, protection, or hidden knowledge depending on cultural context. These meanings often coexist, creating one of the most flexible symbolic systems ever developed. The medical symbol known as the rod of Asclepius, featuring a serpent entwined around a staff, preserves associations that stretch back into antiquity. Although modern medicine is grounded in scientific understanding rather than ancient mythology, the serpent remains a visual reminder of healing and renewal. Such examples reveal an important truth. Sacred animal symbolism often survives even when people forget its origins. A symbol can remain meaningful long after the stories that created it have faded. Folklore preserves even more direct connections. Across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas, traditional stories continue featuring animals as guides, tricksters, guardians, and teachers. Wolves lead heroes through dangerous landscapes. Ravens deliver messages. Foxes outwit stronger opponents. Bears embody strength and endurance. Many of these narratives contain traces of much older beliefs. Scholars studying folklore frequently discover recurring themes linking modern stories to ancient symbolic traditions. The details change. The settings evolve. Yet the underlying relationships between humans and animals remain surprisingly consistent. The persistence of animal symbolism is not limited to stories. It also survives in religion. Numerous contemporary faith traditions continue employing animal imagery inherited from earlier cultures. Sacred texts contain symbolic animals. Religious art incorporates creatures associated with specific virtues or spiritual principles. The meanings may differ from those found in ancient temples, but the basic impulse remains familiar. Humans still use animals to express ideas that are difficult to communicate through abstract language alone. A lamb communicates innocence immediately. A lion conveys strength. A dove suggests peace. The symbolism works because it draws upon patterns deeply embedded within human perception. Modern psychology offers insight into why these symbols remain effective. Humans evolve in close contact with animals for hundreds of thousands of years. Throughout that immense span of time, recognizing animal behavior carried enormous survival value. Certain creatures attracted attention because they represented opportunity, danger, or social significance. As a result, animals occupy a privileged place within human cognition. We notice them. We remember them. We assign meaning to them. This tendency persists even in highly technological societies. A person living in a modern city may rarely encounter wild predators, yet lion symbolism still feels powerful. Most people will never see an eagle hunting in its natural environment, yet the image retains emotional force. Ancient sacred animals continue speaking to instincts shaped long before civilization emerged. The archaeological record increasingly supports this interpretation. Researchers examining prehistoric art often note how consistently certain species appear across large regions and long periods. The same animals repeatedly capture human attention, not because they are random choices, because they resonate. They embody characteristics humans recognize, admire, fear, or aspire to possess. This may help explain why sacred animal traditions emerge independently in so many places. Different cultures encounter different species, Yet similar symbolic patterns appear again and again. Predators become associated with power. Birds become linked to transcendence. Serpents symbolize transformation. Large herbivores represent fertility and abundance. The details vary, but the underlying structures often remain recognizable. Even conservation movements occasionally draw upon these ancient associations. Modern efforts to protect wolves, bears, tigers, elephants, and other animals frequently emphasize symbolic significance alongside ecological importance. Certain species become cultural icons whose survival feels connected to broader ideas about identity, heritage, and responsibility. In an unexpected way, this echoes ancient traditions. The reasons differ, the methods differ, yet humans continue investing certain animals with meanings extending beyond biology alone. The sacred relationship evolves rather than disappears. Today, museums display statues once housed in temples, archaeologists study animal cemeteries, geneticists analyze ancient remains, historians reconstruct forgotten rituals. Yet despite all this knowledge, something remains elusive. Sacred animals are not merely historical artifacts. They reveal enduring aspects of human nature. They show how people understand power, mortality, mystery, and belonging. They demonstrate the remarkable human tendency to seek meaning through relationships with the living world. And even after centuries of research, one final mystery remains. Why do these ancient creatures continue captivating us? Why do stories about sacred animals still feel compelling long after the civilizations that created them have vanished? The answer may lie not in the animals themselves, but in what they reveal about humanity's search for meaning across deep time. By the time the last great animal cults fade, humanity has already woven sacred creatures into nearly every aspect of cultural life. From the walls of temples and palaces to the myths whispered by firesides, animals have mediated relationships between humans and the cosmos. Their presence shapes ethics, identity, and imagination. Across millennia, the lion, serpent, eagle, wolf, jaguar, cat, and countless others move from the forests, rivers, and deserts of the past into enduring symbols that outlast empires, dynasties, and even languages. Yet despite their omnipresence in art and story, the true depths of their significance remain partially hidden, a puzzle left for archaeologists, anthropologists, and historians to interpret through fragments of bone, pigment, and myth. As civilizations expand, these creatures' symbolic reach grows. Sacred bulls are no longer merely representatives of fertility, they become instruments of political propaganda, tied to dynastic authority. Birds are not only messengers between worlds, they also serve as omens influencing decisions of war and peace. Serpents shift seamlessly between death, rebirth, and the guardianship of hidden knowledge. Even smaller or less formidable animals, ravens, foxes, and beetles carry multi-layered meaning that transcends their ecological role, entering the collective imagination in ways that defy linear explanation. This layering of significance highlights a critical truth: sacred animals function on multiple levels simultaneously. They are biological realities, spiritual intermediaries, cultural icons, and moral symbols all at once. A single creature can embody danger, guidance, wisdom, and vitality, creating a dynamic interplay between observation, imagination, and belief. In many ways, the sacredness of animals mirrors the human attempt to reconcile the visible and invisible, the known and unknown, the mundane and the extraordinary. Even as empires collapse, languages vanish, and rituals cease, the echoes of these traditions survive. Lions appear on modern coats of arms. Eagles soar on flags around the world. Serpents entwine in medical symbols and folklore alike. The symbolic resonance of cats, wolves, and ravens continues in storytelling, art, and literature, demonstrating the extraordinary persistence of these ancient relationships across time and space. The animal world remains a canvas upon which humans project meaning, morality, and mystery. Yet perhaps the most compelling aspect of sacred animals lies not in their endurance, but in the questions they leave behind. Why do humans consistently assign spiritual significance to creatures that inspire both fear and fascination? Why do certain species recur across unrelated cultures and continents? Why do creatures that are biologically ordinary sometimes acquire extraordinary symbolic power, while other more prominent animals remain overlooked? No single answer fully satisfies, and the evidence is often incomplete. But it is precisely these uncertainties that make the story of sacred animals so enduring and compelling. In the end, the sacred animals of the ancient world remind us that humans have always sought to understand existence through relationships with the living, the powerful, and the mysterious. They teach us about observation, empathy, imagination, and the capacity to recognize patterns that extend beyond our immediate perception. They offer insight into the moral, spiritual, and ecological reasoning of societies both vanished and surviving. They reveal the interplay between necessity and reverence, between fear and admiration, between practical survival and spiritual reflection. These creatures are both witnesses and participants in humanity's long history. They guide our understanding of the past while reminding us of enduring truths about perception, symbolism, and connection. Through lions, serpents, birds, wolves, and countless others, the ancient world speaks across millennia, challenging us to see the threads that link life, belief, and survival in ways that remain as mysterious and compelling today as they were in prehistory. The story of sacred animals does not end with the disappearance of temples, the extinction of species, or the collapse of civilizations. Even now, their influence lingers quietly in our collective memory. Across continents and millennia, these creatures have guided humanity's understanding of life, death, power, and transformation. They teach us that meaning can emerge from observation, interaction, and imagination. A lion crouching in a distant forest, an eagle soaring high above mountain peaks, a serpent shedding its skin, all these creatures carry echoes of the beliefs, fears, and aspirations of people who lived thousands of years ago. Their presence reminds us that humans have always sought to understand the world through the lens of other living beings, recognizing qualities in animals that illuminate both the external environment and the internal workings of the human mind. The persistence of sacred animals also reflects the adaptability of human thought. As societies changed, as empires rose and fell, as species disappeared from the landscape, the symbolic power of these creatures transformed rather than vanished. They migrated into folklore, art, literature, and ritual, often surviving in altered forms long after the original contexts were lost. The eagle on a modern flag, the lion on a medieval crest, the serpent entwined in a medical emblem, all are descendants of traditions that once placed these creatures at the heart of human understanding. Their continuity suggests that the human fascination with animals is not merely practical or aesthetic, but deeply rooted in the cognitive and emotional architecture of our species. In reflecting upon these relationships, one begins to see a broader truth about human history itself. Civilizations may vanish, languages may fade, and sacred practices may be forgotten. but the impulse to seek meaning in the living world endures. Animals, in their diversity and complexity, offer a lens through which humans interpret uncertainty, mortality, and the unseen forces shaping existence. They remind us that reverence, observation, and imagination have always been intertwined, guiding how communities structure societies, understand nature, and navigate survival in their silent, enduring presence. Sacred animals continue to connect the distant past with the present, whispering fragments of knowledge and mystery to those willing to look closely. Perhaps most poignantly, the story of sacred animals illuminates the fragile but resilient bond between humans and the natural world. Even as landscapes change and species vanish, the memory of these creatures persists, suggesting that our fascination is not fleeting but intrinsic. Their legacy is a mirror, reflecting humanity's attempts to understand power, mortality, morality, and transformation through living beings that both exist independently and participate in human imagination. In every culture across every era, the enduring presence of sacred animals reminds us that the search for meaning has always been entwined with the living world, and that even in silence, in the bones, the carvings, and the myths, these creatures continue to speak. Through this lens, the ancient sacred animals are not merely relics of a lost world, they are enduring teachers. They invite reflection on the deep connections that humans share with life beyond themselves, illustrating the complex interplay of survival, reverence, imagination, and symbolism. They remind us that to observe, honor, and understand the creatures around us is, in many ways, to understand ourselves, and in their continued presence within memory, culture, and symbol, they offer a quiet but profound continuity, a reminder that even as civilizations rise and fall, the threads connecting humans to the animal world stretch across time, linking the distant past to the present and perhaps the future.